Hello and welcome back, and today we're on to talk about a brand new Synology. Now, you guys know that I've been talking about the new Synologies for a bit of a wee while. There's lots of reasons for that. First and foremost, I do think they are one of the best brands in network attached storage. But more importantly, they released four of their biggest releases of the year pretty much within a month and a half to 2 months of each other. They were leaked a little while ago on some documents that made their way onto Reddit, and very soon afterwards we saw them arriving at different parts of the world, and finally it's our turn to get hold of some of them. This is the DS420 Plus. Now, of all of the devices that were kind of hyped and revealed, this is the one that caught me probably by surprise. It's not the most powerful of the four being the DS920, the DS220, the DS720, and this, the 420. The reason this one caught me by surprise is the 4xx Plus series. I thought it was dead. I thought it was gone. I think the last time we saw a 4-bay non-expandable NAS from them in their disk station series was the DS415 Plus, more than 5 years ago. This device seems a more suitable follow-up to that of the DS418 Play, released almost 3 years ago, give or take, with this device featuring very similar hardware to that, but a few extra things. There's one small removal, but in almost every other regard, this is a better NAS than the Play, and we will be doing a comparison between this and the Synology DS418 Play very, very soon on a spec and performance level, thanks to the CPU Insider. We know a lot about both of them, but this is designed for a lovely little middle bracket there, because this is designed with a lot of the hardware features that Synology is now starting to become very popular for. They're always a company that traded on their software more than their hardware, but it's worth saying that over the last few years, their hardware has stepped up to the plate, although I have no idea which sport that comes from. Gonna go baseball? You let me know in the comments. But this unit arrives, it's a 4-bay for around about just shy of £500, including the tax. I think it's going to be about £490, maybe £500 at launch, and that's including tax. So different areas of the world, whatever your tax system is, it's going to differ slightly, and it's unpopulated, and that's the 2 gig base model. Now compare that against the 418 Play, which I will do countless times in this video. That arrives currently at about £450, £460. So the price difference between them in a real commercial sense is about 40 quid. And throughout this video, although I'm going to try to rein in the comparisons as much as I can, I will say straight away that for 40 quid, this blows the 418 Play out of the water. I will also say, unlike a lot of the others of these new series of devices, if you own the 418 Play currently, this is still better enough that it's worth selling what you've got and going for this. All the other ones, the 920, the 720, the 220, a lot of them, the difference between them and their predecessor is not big enough to justify making such an immediate jump within 2 to 3 years. With this device, on the other hand, is enough due to 2 key features about it. I'm going to talk about it later on, but I have banged on about this already for at least 4 minutes. You want to see the damn thing, so let's get it open. Right. Before we do that, though, we've got to look at the box. We've got to look at the pretty box. Now, this is the retail box, much like the other devices we've seen. I realised very early on I'm going to have to do this on this side of the camera because of my light. As you can see, it's a fairly standard retail box. Now, one thing I have said in the previous videos, and people have corrected me on this, I always say that it's the same brown box, but with a different label on the front. And I don't think I've been giving Synology their due there, because a couple of you on Twitter did let me know that I was wrong. And that is that the boxes actually do have printed distinctions, and all the way around the hardware is detailed on that box, detailing exactly what the CPU is inside, what the components that are used inside are, what the accessory pack inside is, and also lots of information on the other side about what the device can do. So I have been wrong in those videos where I've ascertained that it's just the same box with a different label. It really isn't. The label's pretty, but it's worth highlighting that they have printed on that external box, and you can't use this box for other generation devices. It's clearly indicated as this one. And it's little flourishes like that. I mean, again, if you look at the box, even that label, that nice Synology logo built into the label, it's fairly useless. No one's really going to use it. And the majority of people buying this are going to buy it on e-shops, so they're not going to see this until they own it. but it's nice, and I quite like that aesthetic that Synology bring to the table. And I've just realised, apropos of this video, that although I'm making comparisons between this and the Play, at the bottom right of the corner, and I'm sure a lot of you have already noticed down here, is the DS420 Plus, a device that seemingly has a lot of similar hardware traits to this. And that's kind of beeping around there. I've got a video coming very, very soon involving Plex and Video Station, which is almost certainly already live before this video, so I do recommend you check that out. But it is worth highlighting straight away off the bat that this device, although it seems that they have similar hardware, there's more to this than just 2 more bays, which is hopefully something I'm going to touch on later. But that device down there is about 300 quid, and this device here is 500. So another thing to ask yourselves is, what are you getting for 200 quid? I look forward to telling you. So let's get this box open, have a look what we get inside. And again, the packaging will be similar to that of devices I've looked at already. We've got a little tiny box here that has our external power cable, and that's a UK mains lead there. Put that to one side. Next, we've got our accessories box. Inside our accessories box, sorry for the distance between me and the mic here, we have our external power brick there. And again, I believe this is either a 90 or a 120 watt PSU. I'm sure it's on screen right now. They have upped the PSUs on some of these devices due to one particular feature on these, I'll talk about in a bit. There's our external power brick, and again, I know I've said it in the other videos, but I will say it again, but I'll try and praise it a little bit more. I like external power bricks, and I know a number of you are going to see an external power brick on a 4-bay NAS and go, oh, and I get that. For some of you, it's annoying, they dangle around, there's lots of ways in which they can fall apart. They sometimes use proprietary connections, or at least connections that aren't as straightforward as a kettle plug. I get that. But an external power brick is so much easier to replace. It's so much easier in the event of a hardware failure to just swap one of these bad boys out with a brand new one. And again, a PSU is the second most frail part of a NAS, other than the hard drive media, of course. So external power bricks for me, still love them. Right, next we have 2 LAN cables here. Let's get those out of there. These are Cat5e cables. This is a 1 gigabit Ethernet NAS, which I know is an area of contention for a number of you, but much like my DS420 Plus video, I'm going to allow it, because this, of all the devices, the 920 and the 720, I agree with a number of you. I wish they'd had 2.5 GBE. To me, that seemed normal in the current climate of networking, or at least 2.5 GBE, or at least an expandability to add bigger and better ports, or maybe even a separate 2.5 GBE option. But on the case of the 220 and this one, the 420, I'm going to allow it, because the price point and the target audience isn't 2.5 GBE ready, isn't 10 GBE ready. And if you are looking at those sort of solutions, you should be going for more powerful devices anyway. But there we go, there's our 2 1GBE cables, because this has got 2 1GBE ports that can be link aggregated. So you can take advantage of things like load balancing, port trunking, link aggregation, which allows you to effectively double your network connection between this device. So this will be 200 megabytes or so to your local area network to be distributed amongst lots of people on 1 GBE or wireless. Or if they can use lagged ports on their devices, they can get those speeds too. But it's worth highlighting that you only get that with port trunking and link aggregation, with load balancing being kind of a term-based thing, something we talked about in other videos. We have keys for the hard drive trays there on the front for locking those trays up to stop them being accidentally removed. But let's be realistic, if someone really wants to get into those drives, they can. This is merely for accident prevention and to stop you mixing up drives or removing a drive in error and ultimately destroying your RAID. Inside we also have a quick start installation guide there. Lots of information there about the device, utilising it for the very first time and how to set it up. Those of you that watch my DS420 video will know that I totally fell in love with the instruction manual on the 220. Unfortunately, that is region specific and something that only they get. And I know it's a loser thing to fall in love with an instruction manual, but hey, sue me. But still, you do have lots of information there for setting up, and it does direct you to the constantly updated tutorial and database from Synology that's got all the information about DSM that we'll talk about later on. Finally, we have our screws for 2.5-inch media. Now bear in mind, this is a 4-bay NAS, so you've got your 4 drives there, you've got multiple RAID supported, such as JBOD, just a bunch of drives, which isn't really a RAID, it's just a bunch of loose drives. You've got RAID 0 that combines all of that lovely storage together to one giant volume, which is great, with great read and write speeds, but no safety net, and it will fall apart. You've got RAID 1, which you can run on 2 bays at a time. RAID 1 has 2 drives being read and written to simultaneously, and therefore, with those drives being read and written to simultaneously, you get a great performance boost. But the same data is on the disks, and you lose half your capacity with those 2 disks, so bear that in mind. And then you've got your RAID 5 and your RAID 6, which gives you 1 or 2 disks of failure protection. So you have 4 drives in the case of a RAID 5, and data is written across them all in stripes, and then as it gets to the last disk, they get a little blueprint. Next wave, a different drive gets the blueprint, next one, different blueprint, and then it moves all the way across all the drives each wave, and then if one of the drives fails or breaks or whatever, or gets removed accidentally, use your keys. If that happens, then your data is still recoverable by the system. It can rebuild it using the blueprints on the other disks. It's quite useful, and RAID 5 does that, although it's got lesser read and write compared with the others, and of course RAID 6 too, which does the same thing, but with 2 disks of failure, so effectively 50% of your 4 bays of storage gone. Now, with this device, like a number of Synology NASs, it also supports Synology Hybrid RAID. It's the same kinda as RAID 1 and RAID 5, depending on the number of bays you use, but they have disk fluidity. That means that you can mix and match drives as you go. Now, you're not going to do that on day 1. What, you're crazy? But you might fully populate it with 4 TBs, and a few years down the line want to start introducing bigger drives. Maybe you only put 2 disks in at the beginning, because you can run this with as little as 1 disk. You have 2 disks in an SHR, which is like a RAID 1, but then you can add more disks, and these other disks can be bigger capacities, and SHR will work out the best way for that storage, something RAID doesn't give you. You don't get quite the same performance as traditional RAID, but it's pretty close, and it's nice to have that fluidity. The reason I bring all of that up with the screws is because you can install 2.5-inch media for SSDs inside for raw storage, or to be utilised as separate RAID configured volumes and storage pools. And that's it really for your accessories. Where are we? We're probably sitting about 11-12 minutes in the video. We haven't even looked at it yet. I do apologise. I should have mentioned early on at the start of this video that unlike a lot of my videos, I'm trying to film these new Synology videos with 0 prior knowledge. I want to assume that everyone watching this knows nothing about Synology NAS, because a lot of you, this might be your very first NAS purchase, and I don't just want to tell people things that I'm assuming they already know, like my other videos where I will jump over and skirt over a lot of the details. So for those of you that know a lot about Synology NAS, I'm really sorry to have wasted a lot of your time today. Have another coffee, you've earned it. And that's it for your box. We've got the unit in a nice bag that they arrive in there. It's not quite as nice as the 2-bay bag, I'll be honest. It's still quite, you know, it's functional. I guess it's not really reusable in the same way the other bag was. We remove it from the packaging. Chuck that over there. We can take a good look at that. I'm sure some of you are trying to look at that now, so I'm going to hide that and move that out of the way. And there is our 4-bay. There is our DS420 Plus, with that very, very familiar chassis. Very, very similar indeed to that of the 918 Plus and the 920 Plus. We've already done a hardware review for both of those, so do check them out. But the chassis itself is very familiar, but that's not a bad thing. I've always kind of liked this design. This was premiered back with the 918 first came around, and I like it. It's a very, very good balance between quality, value, and efficiency. It is a plastic chassis, which I know some of you aren't really in love with. It does dampen the noise somewhat, and there's lots of ways in which ventilation is factored as well. So we'll go through it properly in a moment, but if we have a look at all the good sides there, we've got the logo, got the top, you've got the base there, and we will talk about those two when we get a moment, as well as the rear of the device there that has got all of those ports and lots of action there. But let's talk about the software a little bit. Now, this device arrived with support of DSM, Disk Station Manager. Currently in version 6.2 another decimal place that keeps changing every time they bring out a new version. But DSM 6.2 is probably the very best NAS software out there today. Other brands have come along and challenged it a great deal, and in some cases have exceeded some parts, but still on the whole, DSM is still the best software out there for most users. The reason being, it is incredibly user-friendly, it's incredibly slick, it's very graphical, and runs like a dream with smart caching happening in the background, a myriad of first-party applications, probably some of the best first-party applications you can get in NAS, available from Synology, run on this device, and arrives with support pretty much any platform, both with client applications or just general access via your web browser. To put that into perspective, a number of you will be buying a device like this for a small business or even just home users. Maybe you're a photographer or a low-level video editor, and you're looking for a backup, another tier to your backup strategy, or you're looking for something that your clients and colleagues, maybe family members, can all connect to for backups or real-time access. Now, with this device serving as an alternative to things like Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, and all those different cloud platforms that have got encompassed services with them, this works very well as an alternative. Case in point, if you're someone that uses Google Drive and you use Google Drive because of its connection to things like G Suite with its Office applications and Google Docs, or you're someone that uses OneDrive, which arrives with support of the Microsoft applications like Office 365, and you use things like Skype for communication, this has you covered with its own apps. Instead of using cloud services up there with all your data knocking around, everything's handled in-house. There is internet connectivity, but you can sever it if you want. Case in point, with this device, if you like using Google Docs, you like using Office, this arrived with Synology Office. It's got Office applications for opening docs, spreadsheets, PowerPoint, that sort of thing. It opens up all of those different things, presentation files. You can open them all internally with your connected users. If you like using your Outlook for dealing with your Office files, or using Google Gmail, and within G Suite, you can take advantage of Synology Mail and MailStation for handling email accounts that can be run directly from this, or your third-party accounts migrated to them. If you like Google Calendar and some of the calendar applications built into Office 365, this has Synology's calendar application. If you like the one portal access point of Google Drive, of Dropbox, where you can see all the files and folders, open them from within the application, Synology Drive is on this with its improved file pinning and file streaming with the client application for Windows platforms, usable within Chrome as well, but also with improvements coming very, very soon in DSM 7 for Mac users as well. Now, on top of that, you can look at communication and collaboration with things on this device like Synology Chat, serving as an alternative to things like Skype and WhatsApp for all of your users, either with the data on the NAS or not, to be able to communicate. There's mobile phone applications, desktop applications, and the ability to access those tools via your web browser. You've even got a dedicated surveillance tool in Surveillance Station, currently in 8.2, allowing you to have a complete control deck of IP cameras in your home or office environment that allow you to monitor them, control pan, tilt, zoom, have tailored alerts, and take advantage of more modern and equipped, or hardware equipped, including AI cameras, in your home or office environment, having all of that data coming to this NAS as an MVR. If you want to enjoy your multimedia, you like watching movies on Netflix or Amazon Prime and stuff like that, got you covered with Video Station. So with this device, you can have all of the media that you own, not that you rent, own on this device, and the slick user interface straight away available to you that has trailers, it has reviews, cast listings, descriptions, thumbnails, all of that metadata sucked into this device. You've got that slick user interface with Video Station available for desktops, available via your web browser, available for mobile phone devices like Android and iOS. You've got it for Amazon Fire Stick. You've got it on lots of platforms, except for Roku. One of you said in one of my previous videos, you're absolutely right. Currently no Roku app. So, lots of ways to enjoy your media and support of Plex Media Server 2. So if you don't use Video Station, or you currently use Plex Media Server, whether you are a free user or a Plex Pass user, this has you covered with transcoding support as well. Transcoding support not quite as high as some of the quad-core devices like the 920 or the 720, as well as some of the more powerful devices out there that are more Intel Core or even Pentium devices that may not have a graphical embedding but have the raw power to push things through. Although a native transcoding of 4K and 1080p is pretty darn good on this, and I did do a whole video on Video Station on that 220 down there that will be very similar to this. What I'm saying is, this is not just the hardware. We will get onto the hardware. This is about a combination of hardware and software. And all of that software is included with this. Some things require a few extra licenses, like with the surveillance cameras I mentioned. You get 2 licenses, so 2 cameras. But if you want to add more cameras, you've got to buy licenses, which I know sounds annoying, but to offset the cost of the software, a lot of business users might use this and suddenly put up 12 or 15 cameras, and they demand very good service. If you're going to use it in an enterprise fashion, you kind of have to pay enterprise to keep the software running. It's a two-way street because this device arrives with 2 years of manufacturer's warranty, but the software is basically unlimited warranty. So to have that software, to have unlimited service support from Synology, it's got to be supported somehow. And I know we've had big discussions in the past about camera licenses. There's arguments for and against, and I think it's less about the licenses, more about your demands as the user and how stable you want it. But that's a subject for another video, one that I've already done. Google it, or maybe the algorithm in Google's already chucked it on the side. Who knows? But what I'm saying is the 420 for 500 Nika at this point, the software you're getting is all-encompassing. And particularly if you're in the middle ground as a user, whether you are a business user that doesn't want to go nuts because this might be your first investment, or to add it as an existing tier, or if you're a home user that understands they don't need the world in terms of hardware, but they want a decent amount of storage, this could be the one for you. I mean, in terms of storage, this does support those 16 TB Iron Wolves that I've talked about before. 16 terabyte NAS hard drives in the Seagate Iron Wolf series of drives. That gives you an enormous amount of storage potential here. With all your RAID, that's 64 terabytes in a 4-bay, which, I mean, yes, it's 2020, but that's still an insane amount of storage. But let's get back to the hardware. Now this device, again, very familiar chassis, lots of cooling, plastic made, and again, inside lots of metal structure inside to keep it together, and the plastic and active cooling on the rear, passive cooling on the sides. The trays are click and load for installing hard drives, very, very easy, just remove the clip either side. And to put the hard drive inside, it is incredibly easy. You just put the drive, slide it straight in there, pop the clip on, and boom. You pop it inside there and you are ready to go straight away. There you go. Drive goes in, pop it in, and if you look at my other videos where we've gone into a lot more detail about the installation of these things, you'll see how straightforward it is. You can put one drive in and populate it fully or not. It'll run with one drive if you like. As you can see, there's the locks there on the front for each of those individual trays, and I should mention those trays do support those 2.5-inch drives, but as mentioned, you will need to use a screwdriver there to install 2.5-inch media. 3.5-inch drives can be click and loaded very, very easily. Now on the front, you've got the LEDs there at the top denoting system, drive access, and system status, basically just the activity of the device. And on the base of the device here, you've got your power button and that USB port. And again, I'll try to abridge it a little bit than I have in my other videos, but I will say USB ports on this NAS, they're not designed for keyboard and mice and stuff like that. USB ports on Synology NAS are a little bit different. They're due to be utilized to a lesser degree to supported dongles, you know, for wireless connectivity, but there's fewer and fewer being supported in DSM 6.2 due to the changing nature of 802.11n and C and stuff like that. Do check out my video on that. A lot of plugs today, a lot of plugs. But you can also use it for printers and UPSs too. A UPS to, you know, keep this device powered up, and with the USB acting as a kind of information source to help the UPS and the NAS work together in the event of a power failure. That's quite useful as well. It's all built into the DSM software. But the USB also supports external storage media, USB flash drives, big old external drives, and more. And there's a whole system of backup, synchronization, and restore tools built into that USB architecture, with both the hyper backup software inside and USB station, which ironically was the name of that device up there at the top, which I'm pretty sure is off camera. But it If you want to, for example, and remember, everything I'm about to say now works in both directions, both to and from the NAS and USB. What you can do with an external drive is connect it into that USB port, or the ones on the one on the rear that I'm going to talk about in a bit. And you can do several things. You can create another tier to your backup strategy. So, say here's a USB drive, USB here. That is a USB-C, but you can connect USB-C to USB-A, it's included. You can connect an external drive to this NAS. Now, say you go on photo shoots, maybe you're a student, maybe you're at work. For some reason or another, you carry portable USB media. You do your day's work, stick your data on there, you get home, end of the day, whatever, connect the drive via USB to that port. Now, with the software, you can do it automatically or manually on your mobile phone or on your desktop. You can set it up that you back up this drive to the NAS automatically. You can set it up that as soon as the drive connects, the NAS does its thing without you interacting with it. That backup and that synchronization can be one of three main ways. One, just backing up the drive to a preset folder. And remember, works in both ways. If you want it to be every time you connect, it goes that way. Two, a differential backup where you connect the drive and only the files that have changed on this external drive are then backed up. So that means you can create a large pile of data even though you keep emptying this drive. The differential backup will make sure it keeps the changed files. You can do a live sync where the folder on this NAS and the folder on this USB are always identical, which is great. Or another one, which is lesser used, hence why it's not in the big three, is a time managed backup where every time you connect it, it creates a brand new version of this disk. So say you add a gig of data to this every day, or you change the files on it every day. Every time you back up, it creates a completely different folder with each of those folders being a time-managed backup. So it's each version of that backup. And the USB ports, although heavily overlooked on NAS, are very, very useful. And I do think that a lot of you don't really see how useful it is to take advantage of the USB ports to create another tier to your backup strategy. Something I'll say in my videos a huge amount is that this isn't actually a backup. Okay, they might use the word backup. Hell, I use the word backup, but in most cases, this is not a backup because a number of you do not use this as a backup. If you truly do, then you can call it a backup. But if you are someone that is utilizing multiple PCs or multiple phones in your home or business environment or multiple IP cameras, and that is sending data to this NAS, and then you're, I want to make room on my phone, I'm going to delete that. Whoop, I've just overwritten a file on my PC. Whoop, the cameras are only sending data here and they're constantly recording. That's not a backup anymore. That's the only version of those files that you own. It's not a backup. And if this falls over and dies, or someone steals it, or some sod didn't lock the tray and remove the drive, you potentially lose your data, RAID depending. But if, just for that last one anyway, my point is, this is only a backup if you use it as a backup. If you are worried and your data is that important, think about how much you would lose if financially or personally or emotionally, I went there, if you lose that data. Work out what that is in terms of pounds or dollars or euros or whatever, rubles. What year is it? If whatever you're going to use, whatever that cost is, take that number and spend it on an external drive. Spend it on a big drive, spend it on a little drive, whatever is the quantity of data space that you need to recover, and use that USB backup. There are other things. There's Synology C2 Cloud. You can synchronize this with Google Drive and Dropbox or whatever. You can use that cloud storage and create multiple tiers. You can take advantage of a number of the new upgrades for cloud and synchronization in DSM-7. But till you do that, or if you want to utilize a local, my hand is on the data strategy, use a USB backup. It doesn't cost much, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper than both data recovery and taking advantage of trying to recover your data and losing all of that data. Think of the pictures of your family, your wedding day, you business users. Think of how much you'd lose if you lost all your client data. USB backups, everyone. Man, I'm preachy today. But next, we'll look at the sides where you've got the lovely logo there for ventilation. Always a big fan of that. Lots of nice cool air passing through there. It's also quite slick and quite branded. I quite like that. But all the air being drawn via the rear of this device via those active cooling fans. Nice and utilising those passive cooling system there to keep things lovely and airy. And of course, NAS is going to be on for days, weeks, months, or sometimes even years at a time without truly being powered down. So effective internal cooling and ventilation is very, very important. You've got that ventilation on that side. You've got that ventilation on that side. Even on the front, if you angle it around, you can see lots of ways in which ventilation has been figured out. Even on the base, which brings me to the bit that was the biggest surprise when I learnt about this device, that the 420, not only that it existed, but also that it arrived with M2 NVMe cache. That's right, not only have you got those hard drive bays at the front, but you can equip this device with SSD cache. Now, if you aren't aware, NVMe SSDs are smaller form factor SSDs that once you install them inside, allow you to create hugely improve internal performance on those hard drives. So hard drives give you somewhere between 160 to 250 megabytes of performance per drive. And again, that depends on the complexity of the drives that you're using. They're spinning platters and an ARM reading from the disks. In a RAID array, you can generally increase the performance by adding additional drives of around 100, on average, probably somewhere between 70 to 120 megabytes increase in performance by adding more drives to your RAID, based on the RAID, and also on the enterprise quality of the drives you use. But even then, the drive area you're creating is still going to be on mechanical disks. So even with that, all that performance, if you try to access multiple read-write operations at once from the same disks, you're going to hit a wall. If you're doing multiple active operations like archiving and zipping files or extracting and running VMs, there's lots of duplication there happening at the same time to the same disk from multiple instances, where caching will hugely make it better. With those SSDs at the bottom, you would install the NVMe SSDs, and they can only be used for caching. They can't be utilized for raw storage, unfortunately, which I know is a big bummer to a number of you out there. But the NVMe's inside can be used to further improve the performance of those disks. And we will be doing full performance testing and benchmarks of this with and without SSD caching very soon, utilizing that drive there. On top of that, it's also going to be running the same tests on the 2-bay as well. And I'm hoping when we use the 720 and the 420, both of which have got into NVMe cache, it's going to be interesting to see the performance difference of not only the 4 disks, but the different internal hardware architecture that we'll get onto in a bit. But very easy to install a drive, take the panel off, pop the drive inside. There's not even a screwdriver needed. It clips in, and you can pop the NVMe in very easily. You can put in one if you like for just read-only caching. I believe they've enabled write-only caching in DSM-7, but I'm going to check. But with 2 of them inside, you have the option of both read-only caching and read-write caching, the latter being far more advantageous. And always try to have at least 10% of the hard drive storage measured against the SSD. So for every 10 terabytes of storage, have 1 terabyte of NVMe SSD cache. It's not, a solid rule, and it's very, very dependent on you as the user, how much data you create. But me personally, that's how much I would use. Now, moving around, we can look at the rear of this device. Now, the rear has got those 2 cooling fans there, and those 2 fans, both of which can be set automatically or manually very, very easily, with the RPM increased or decreased either by the system in terms of the internal temperature, or manually if things like noise are bugging you. But I will say this is not a noisy NAS drive. You have to be pretty sensitive to noise to be irritated by this. I will say if you use more enterprise level hard drives, bigger than about 8 or 10 TB, chances are you're going to hear those drives a lot more. They hum and click and whir a lot more. And more enterprise-led drives at 7200 RPM that use helium technology, they will make a little bit more of a buzz and a hum while in utilization, something this system just can't control. But in terms of general utilization, or if you're going to use 4, 6 TB drives, that sort of thing, you're probably going to be absolutely fine. We have got that USB port at the bottom there. But one difference between this and the Play we can immediately talk about is the fact that this has got 2 LAN and no eSATA port. We've got those 2 LANs that we've discussed, but this is not an expandable NAS. Not that the Play was, but the Play at least allowed you to connect an eSATA device, I believe. This, on the other hand, only lets you have those 4 bays of storage. So do bear that in mind about your long-term data requirements, because you can bolt on additional storage in DSM-7 using their hybrid mount coming very, very soon. It allows you to add additional drives visible as a blob of data on their own file system and therefore usable via localized storage quite easily. But hybrid share, there you go, I got the name wrong there, hybrid share, nearly did that. But moving forward from that, we can talk about the internal hardware and how that's going to change things. Now, the CPU inside this is the J4025. It is a dual-core processor. It's a 2.0 GHz CPU that can be burst up to 2.9 GHz, which is pretty impressive. We're hitting that near 3 GHz limit. It also arrived with support of AES-NI improved encryption, 4K and 1080p transcoding, and in most regards outperforms that of its predecessor, although there's some 8 and 10-bit HDR. There is a debate there, and we are going more and more into that in our Plex and Video Station testing on this device soon. We've already got those out there for the 220 Plus, but we'll be working on that with this too. On top of that, you've got support of DDR4 memory, so its predecessor using DDR3L. The old one arrived with 2 gig of DDR3L, that's 1866 megahertz memory there, that could be upgraded to 6 gig. This as well can go from 2 to 6 gig, but this uses DDR4, 2666 megahertz, a big percentage jump in terms of frequency. And with a more equipped, agile, and efficient CPU, you're going to get some great performance there. Now, a number of you that watched me talk earlier on about those NVMe ports were probably screaming at this screen, bit rude, but screaming at the screen that NVMe SSD cache is useless without improved network ports. And to a degree, I agree with you. You're right. Having improved internal speeds, it's not going to be for everyone. Internal speeds, you can get improvements of things like Plex Media Server for processing and handling files. If you're running business files for sharing that involve a lot of engagement and encoding and graphical manipulation, NVMe SSD cache is very, very beneficial, but there's no avoiding the simple truth that this is not going to give you anything externally more than 200 megs. There are ways to improve it with compression and decompression systems. I know Presto File and stuff like that, to kind of artificially create a compression technique where larger data packets are compressed and decompressed later, but it's not for everyone. Again, you do need quite hardwired systems for that. But the CPU and memory inside this are still pretty darn good for processes like that. And at this price point of 500, I'm still quite pleased with that. Although NVMe is a little wasted on it, I think. I don't think this is a device that needed NVMe SSD caching. I like it, definitely. And I like that I included it. And I hope that didn't mean that that price increase that we talked about at the beginning of 40 to 50 quid is justified by those, because I think a lot of you are probably not going to take advantage of them on this. But it's still a nice feature. I'm glad they put it on the 720, and I'm glad they put it on the 920, but on this, it's a debating point whether you're going to be utilizing it. Now, on the subject of hardware, let's talk about memory, because I know a number of you are interested in this subject. It's something that keeps coming up time and time and again. It's only been more fierce on the newer generation of Synology NASs, and that is upgrading your memory. You see that little port in there? This device arrives with 2 gig of memory inside, as mentioned, that DDR4 stick. Now that DDR4 stick inside here of 2 gig, you have to disassemble this entire device to get to it, and also Synology state that that port is soldered. Now I will be doing a strip down for this to double check that, but I don't think they've got any reason to lie really, because they know people are going to strip this thing down, and almost certainly before this video has been watched by you, someone has already done it. Maybe even me, who knows? Google, not yet. We're near the end. But there is that port there inside for upgrading your memory. Now, Synology say you can upgrade this with one of their own official memory modules. This is one of their memory modules. It is empty. I've got it over there. And this is a 2666 megahertz 4 gig upgrade. It allows you to add 4 gig of memory to this device. That's what it looks like. There's your 4 gig of memory, 1 gig per cell on top of that stick. And on the base, we have no more because it's only 4 gig. Now, there's a few arguments to and from, and I think it would be very remiss of me not to mention it. First and foremost, 4 gig's not a lot. 6 gig over the top, you know, it's not terrible for the end user in mind for this device. Sorry, the light went a bit weird there in the background, didn't it? 4 gig upgrade to this. So you've got 6 gig on a 2 and 4 gig stick. It's a bit weird. I'm not sure how I feel about mixed frequencies. It doesn't really impact stuff, but given that it's non-ECC memory as well, and a number of you that might be a sticking point, you business users, you shouldn't really, if you're a big business user, it's not really for you. But I'm not sure how I feel about that 6 gig memory top, and also the fact that that 4 gig memory, it's about, depending if you shop around, 70 to 90 pounds including tax for 4 gig in 2020. That's quite a lot for 4 gig of memory. It is their branded memory, and it does make sure that your warranty is completely intact, and there's no quibble problems on that, and they will back you up all the way. They're a great company for that. But 4 gig, it's tough to get over, isn't it? It's. I know a number of you feel the same way because you've said it ever since we first started talking about this device. We will be doing performance testing of this with NVMe, with upgraded memory, and of course we will be trying different memory upgrades on this device. We did do, full disclosure, and I'm sure it's already live, we did crucial memory upgrades on the DS220 Plus down there. We installed a 16 gig module and a 32 gig module, and the 32 gig module did not work, and we almost bricked the system. Do not try that. But the 16 gig module, the SODIMM that we put inside from Crucial, 16 gig, that retailed pretty similar in price, to be honest, to that 4 gig. But installing that 16 gig module, the one down there, worked for the most part. I'm not going to say it was perfect, it wasn't. There was graphical problems along the way, and some parts of the installation did not see the 16 gig on the screen. It was there, and it was definitely usable by the key applications, but there's no denying that Resource Monitor had a hell of a time of trying to monitor that memory. So I'm not going to say it was a bulletproof experiment. But a lot of you are going to have this sticking point over the memory, and I'm not going to say this device is perfect. It's not. The 920 is pretty perfect, although 1 GBE, and the 720 is definitely my favourite of the 4. But the 420 for a home middle user will give you more than enough. And in many regards, it actually challenges the 918 that came before it. That is a significant jump more expensive than this. So if you're looking at the 918 and you thought, I don't think I'm going to use it all, this might be the one for you, the 420, because it's brought the general standard of NAS hardware up in a number of ways, with DDR4, with the newer gen CPU, with NVMe SSD cache and dual LAN, but it's also not hitting too high above its own weight in terms of network connectivity and in terms of how much you can upgrade that memory. But this has been my hardware review of the DS420 Plus. I like it. I look forward to comparing it against its predecessor and against rivals in QNAP and Acer Store. I will look into that. But otherwise, if you have enjoyed this video, click like. If you want to learn more, click subscribe. And do read my full hardware review and a little bit of software too in the description below at NAS Compares, as well as my software overview of this device coming in the next few days. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.